Remember when Saturday mornings meant a family trip to the local hardware store, where the smell of fresh-cut lumber mixed with paint and the staff knew your name? Canada once boasted a proud lineup of homegrown hardware chains that served communities from coast to coast, places where you could buy a single screw or an entire cottage kit, get expert advice from clerks who'd climbed ladders for decades, and leave with everything needed for the weekend's DIY project. Yet as big box retailers swept in and the retail landscape shifted, these beloved chains vanished one by one, taking with them the creaky wooden floors, free calendars, handwritten price tags, and that unmistakable sense of neighborly service that made hardware shopping feel like a hometown ritual. Beaver Lumber began in the early 1900s and grew into one of Canada's largest lumber and hardware retailers, instantly recognizable by its cheerful beaver logo and the slogan, "Your Lumber One Store," that echoed across the nation. By the late 1990s, it was Canada's fourth largest building supply chain, before Home Hardware acquired it in 1999 to 2000, bringing an end to a beloved brand that had served communities for nearly a century. Many remember the comforting smell of fresh-cut wood and drying paint as they walked the aisles. Stores often had creaky wooden floors and a homey, small-town feel where staff knew regulars by name and could recommend the right nail or board for any project. Beaver Lumber was famous for its Beaver Homes plans, a concept so enduring that customers could buy ready-to-build cottage or house packages complete with blueprints and materials. A service. Home Hardware still markets today as Beaver Homes and Cottages. Kits shoppers fondly recall the green and yellow product packaging, the annual catalogs bursting with tools, building materials, and seasonal project guides, and those free store calendars or stickers that kids treasured. Weekend trips to Beaver Lumber with parents or grandparents were a ritual. Helping dad load lumber for a backyard deck, flipping through project pamphlets by the paint counter, or simply soaking in the atmosphere of a place that made DIY dreams feel achievable and family projects feel like adventures. Tracing its roots to the 1830s in Toronto, Aikenhead's grew into a prominent Ontario hardware chain that remained family-run for over a century until Molson acquired it in 1971. By 1994, Home Depot purchased the chain and rebranded its stores, marking the end of this historic Canadian hardware name. The flagship Aikenhead store in downtown Toronto was a multi-level treasure trove. 6 floors of hardware goods housed in an old brick building with steep wooden staircases, narrow aisles packed from floor to ceiling, and clerks who would climb rolling ladders to fetch obscure items from the top shelves. Shoppers recall the classic hardware store smell of metal, wood, and oil that greeted them on each floor, and the slightly chaotic charm of a place where every square inch was crammed with something useful. Aikenhead's prided itself on carrying everything. You could buy a single screw or an obscure-sized bolt out of a tiny bin, the kind of personalized inventory hardly found in today's big-box stores, and they offered services like glass cutting and key making right on site. Longtime customers remember the chain's distinctive turquoise storefront signs and the friendly, knowledgeable staff who could problem-solve any DIY question with patience and expertise. Many in Toronto reminisce about trips to Aikenhead's with their parents, an almost ritual Saturday outing where the store's old-fashioned atmosphere made it feel like an adventure for kids exploring each floor. When Home Depot took over, locals nostalgically watched the beloved turquoise Aikenhead signs come down, feeling the end of an era as the familiar hardware haunt gave way to orange logos and cavernous aisles. Established in 1903, Pascal's was a Montreal-based hardware empire that later expanded into furniture retail, becoming the place to get hardware in Quebec for much of the 20th century. The company operated dozens of stores plus separate furniture showrooms before the hardware division went bankrupt in 1991, closing the chapter on a beloved brand that had served generations of Quebecers shoppers. Remember Pascal's urban stores as jam-packed, with many locations in bustling shopping malls or along busy streets, their aisles crammed full of tools, fasteners, electrical gadgets, and appliances. The atmosphere was a distinctive mix of neon lighting and the scent of new electronics and metal parts, a blend of hardware store and early tech shop that felt hectic yet exciting, especially compared to the quieter furniture outlets the company ran separately. Uniquely, Pascal's sold both hardware and furniture under the same brand, meaning a family could buy a kitchen table and a set of wrenches in one go. A one-stop home solution that was novel at the time. The chain was known for its thick weekly flyers and seasonal catalogs that advertised everything from paint and power drills to sofas, and had a reputation for stocking some hard-to-find European tools and quality kitchenware, reflecting Montreal's diverse consumer base. Quebecers often share rosy memories of Pascal's as part of family life, recalling tagging along as mom or dad browsed for a new toaster or the right size of screws, fascinated by the array of goods on display. For kids, an outing to Pascal's might end with an ice cream or hot dog at the mall food court, making the hardware trip feel like a special event. And the brand's disappearance in the early 90s left many feeling that those everything under one roof hardware stores of their youth were gone forever. Originating in British Columbia with roots in a Revelstoke lumber operation, Revy home centers rose to prominence in the 1980s and 1990s, growing to over 50 stores across Western Canada, and positioning itself as a regional home improvement powerhouse before merging into the Rona chain. In 2001, Revy stores were known for their warehouse-style layout, wide concrete floors, tall steel shelves, and an attached lumber yard where the smell of freshly cut timber hit you the moment you arrived. The atmosphere was no frills and practical, with garden supplies stacked next to building materials and the constant sound of forklifts beeping in the background as you shopped, giving a sense that real work was getting done all around you. As a full-service home center, Revy carried everything from power tools and plumbing parts to seasonal patio furniture, and DIY enthusiasts appreciated the in-house project pamphlets and how-to guides available by the paint counter, handy brochures on how to build a fence or lay a patio that inspired many weekend projects. The chain also had its own house brand of paints and hardware and ran big seasonal sales, with the spring garden sale and fall tool sale especially anticipated by regulars who marked their calendars for those events. In Western Canada, a Saturday trip to Revy was often a family affair, parents loading up on supplies for the next renovation while kids wandered the aisles, imagining future forts built from lumber offcuts. Former customers nostalgically mentioned the friendly staff at Revy who'd remember your ongoing project and ask, "Is that deck finished yet?" A sense of local community in those stores that many feel got lost after the Rona merger and the later arrivals of U.S. big box competitors. Launched in the 1960s, Cashway grew into Ontario's third largest hardware chain, with over 60 stores focused on lumber and building materials by the 1990s, catering especially to contractors and serious DIYers with a wide range of building supplies at cash-and-carry value prices. In 2000, Rona purchased Cashway, and the brand was eventually retired as stores were rebranded, ending decades of service to Ontario communities. A Cashway store felt like the quintessential lumberyard experience. Customers recall the earthy smell of sawdust and plywood stacks, and how the yards were often open air with rows of lumber, bags of cement, and gravel piles stretching as far as you could see. Inside, the stores were unpretentious with concrete floors, industrial shelving, and a small office counter where regulars in work boots sipped free coffee and chatted with the staff about their latest projects. It wasn't fancy, but it was friendly and functional, a place where you felt at home the moment you walked in. Cashway was known for its contractor specials and bulk deals, whether you needed a truckload of 2x4s, a pallet of shingles, or just a few pieces of drywall. And in the spring, their colorful flyers advertising fence posts, patio slabs, and barbecue grills for the upcoming summer were eagerly awaited. The chain also offered planer and cutting services, a bonus for customers who could get lumber cut to size on site, something big box stores weren't yet doing in those days. In communities across Ontario, trips to Cashway were often a family routine, especially for those building cottages or finishing basements in the 70s and 80s. Dad might bring the kids along in the pickup truck, and the kids would watch in awe as forklifts zoomed by, sometimes getting to help by holding the list or fetching a small item, and former patrons nostalgically mentioned the personal touch, like how the Cashway clerk or yard foreman often knew exactly what project you were working on and would ask, "How did that drywall job turn out?" as you returned for more supplies. Started in 1917 in Winnipeg, Macleod's began as a mail-order supplier of farm equipment and harnesses, and later expanded into hardware retail, eventually operating a network of over 200 stores across Western Canada and Ontario by the mid-20th century, serving as a one-stop general store and hardware chain for many smaller towns. The brand faltered by the early 1990s, with remaining stores eventually absorbed into other cooperatives like True Value and later Rona, ending an era when Macleod's was the hub of Prairie Main Streets. A typical Macleod store was a blend of hardware store and general store, often featuring wooden plank floors that creaked underfoot and large ceiling fans whirring in summer to keep the air moving. The atmosphere carried a unique mix of scents: rubber tires and motor oil from the auto section, fertilizer and seeds from the farm supplies aisle, and a bit of dust on the shelves that gave the place a comfortable, lived-in feel. Macleod stores were usually a bit old-fashioned, with handwritten price tags and display cases showing off pocket knives or fishing lures alongside the screws and nails, making every visit feel like a trip back in time. Macleod sold practically everything. You could pick up a hammer, a new pair of work boots, a kitchen kettle, or even a child's bicycle in one visit. And in the early days, their mail-order catalogs were essential for farm families who would thumb through pages to order tools or parts by post. The stores became known for selling reliable house brand goods like Macleod's paint or nails and offering services like blade sharpening or small engine repair, truly living up to the name department store meets hardware. For many Canadians who grew up in the 1940s to 70s, Macleod's was woven into everyday life. Kids might recall getting a surprise toy or bag of candy while parents shopped for farm tools or home necessities. The place where moms bought fabric and dads bought nails, often in the same trip. That personal touch, with the owner behind the counter asking about your family, made Macleod's more than a store, and its disappearance in the early 90s left many feeling that a piece of small-town history had faded away, replaced by larger, impersonal chains. Started in 1970 in Calgary, Totem grew into a leading hardware and building supply chain with 14 large stores across Alberta, before being acquired by Rona in 2004. With the Totem name gradually phased out over the next decade, Totem stores were known for their warehouse-style layout, combining indoor retail space with expansive outdoor lumber yards. And shoppers recall the big, bold Totem signage featuring a stylized totem pole logo visible from the highway inside. The vibe was bright and welcoming, with wide aisles stocked for both urban renovations and rural projects. You'd see contractors in cowboy hats picking up fence posts alongside city homeowners buying paint. Totem distinguished itself with robust contractor services, including drive-through lumber yards, where you could literally drive your truck in to load materials. The chain ran memorable advertising in Alberta with TV commercials featuring DIY tips, and a cheerful jingle many can still hum. And in-store project displays like sample-finished decks sparked customers' imaginations. Albertans who grew up in the 80s and 90s smile when they think of Totem, memories of piling into the family truck for a trip to get materials for a new backyard fence, dad checking lumber quality while kids got a balloon or popcorn from a store event. When the familiar Totem signs were replaced by RONAs, many felt a twinge of nostalgia for the end of a purely Albertan hardware tradition. Marshall Wells began as a U.S. hardware wholesaler in the 1800s, expanding into Canada by 1901 with a Winnipeg-based subsidiary that oversaw hundreds of independent hardware dealers across the country, especially on the prairies, until the brand disappeared after 1985. Marshall Wells hardware stores embodied old-time hardware charm, typically family-run with big wooden counters and rows of tiny labeled drawers behind them containing every bolt, screw, and nail imaginable. Customers remember narrow aisles packed with goods, a bell jingling when you walked in, and the smell of bulk nails mixed with garden seeds or leatherwork gloves. Visiting felt like stepping into a bygone era. Marshall Wells was known for its wide array serving both town and country, paint, tools, kitchenware, and farm supplies all under one roof, with services like blade sharpening, tool repair, and custom parts ordering through their catalog system. Many seniors across Canada recall being taken by the hand to the local Marshall Wells, where the shop owner might give a child a penny candy from the jar at the counter. In small communities, the Marshall Wells was more than a store. It was a meeting spot where neighbors caught up on news while buying nails or fishing tackle. And the fading of the name in the 1980s marked the end of an important chapter in Canadian retail history. Incorporated in 1937 in Montreal, Handy Andy grew into a popular hardware, automotive, and appliance retail chain in Eastern Canada, with roughly 95 stores by 1960, making it a familiar name for Quebec and Ontario shoppers before being acquired by UAP in 1984 and ending its run as a general hardware retailer. The vibe in a Handy Andy store was a unique mix. Imagine a mid-20th century Canadian Tire in a smaller storefront, truly packed to the gills with fishing rods, hockey sticks, tools, paint, toasters, and radios all crammed together. Customers recall the blend of smells: new rubber tires stacked in the corner, oil and grease from car parts, and the scent of freshly opened paint cans all at once. Handy Andy's claim to fame was being a one-stop shop for handy men, selling automotive parts, housewares, hardware, and even sports equipment under one roof. A very memorable service was the vacuum tube testing machine for electronics. Customers could bring in tubes from their ailing TV or radio, plug them into the store's tester, and find a replacement on the spot, a big draw in the 1950s/60s. Those who grew up in Montreal and southern Quebec waxed nostalgic about trips to Handy Andy with their fathers, a Saturday run for a spark plug, a replacement toaster element, or a set of screws was routine, and kids might wander the aisles, seeing all the intriguing gadgets and sporting goods, leaving feeling ready to conquer the weekend project. Opened in 1951 by the Kitchen family in Toronto's Lansing neighborhood, this chain grew to 9 locations in the Greater Toronto area before merging with BC-based Revelstoke in 1998 and transitioning to Rona ownership by 2001. Lansing Buildall stores had a friendly, neighborhood feel, modest-sized outlets where longtime customers were greeted by staff who knew them by name. The atmosphere was comfortable and welcoming. The scent of fresh-cut wood from the lumber section, maybe a radio quietly playing in the background, and knowledgeable employees in red vests ready to help calculate how many 2x4s you'd need for your project. Lansing gained a reputation for high-quality building materials that contractors trusted, offering old-school services like on-site cutting and custom orders. If you needed a special hinge or particular paint mix, Lansing would get it for you. Toronto residents who grew up in the 60s to 80s reminisce about Saturday morning trips to the local Lansing Buildall with their parents, picking up supplies for weekend projects while kids helped by holding the list or carrying small items to the counter. The warmth of those stores, sometimes with a resident cat roaming the warehouse or a bulletin board of local contractor business cards, is remembered.